live freely, animated, and motivated by God's Spirit. Live freely, animated, and motivated. That's why we can't be dead in church, by the way. Animated. Motivated. Anybody need some of that? By your great intellect. No. Motivated by the circumstances lining up. No. Motivated by God's Spirit. Then you won't feed the compulsions of selfishness. Okay. It doesn't say you'll never have those compulsions. It says you won't feed them. All of us have natural selfish compulsions. He says you just won't feed them if you live by God's Spirit. Then he goes on in verse 18, he says, why don't you choose to be led by the Spirit? Look at that. It says, why don't you choose? In other words, this is a choice. He's not writing this to the world, to the unsaved. He's writing this to the church. He says, why don't you choose to be led by the Spirit? In other words, it's a choice. You can make a choice as well to not be led by the Spirit. And that's what I'm preaching it to me and I'm preaching it to you. I'm hoping you're hearing this. This is a time where we need to choose to be led by the Spirit. This is a season we should choose to be led by the Spirit, to yield to the Holy Spirit, and so escape the erratic compulsions of a law-dominated existence. Living by the Spirit is a choice. Then he goes on, and understanding what this is all about, he says, it's obvious what kind of life develops out of trying to get your own way all the time. And he goes on to say, some of these were like, I don't know, I read this in the Message, and some of these were ouch. Repetitive, loveless, cheap sex, a stinking accumulation of mental and emotional garbage. Frenzied and joyless grabs for happiness. Trinket gods. Magic show religion. Paranoid loneliness. Cutthroat competition. All-consuming yet never satisfied wants, a brutal temper, an impotence to love or be loved, divided homes and divided lives, small-minded and lopsided pursuits, the vicious habit of depersonalizing everyone into a rival, uncontrolled and uncontrollable addictions, ugly parodies of community. And then he goes, I could go on. And I'm like, please don't. Listen, he's not writing this to the world and saying this is going to be this is how the world's going to live. He's writing this to the church. He says you have a choice to be led by the Spirit, or you can choose to be led by your own natural strength. And in your own natural strength, you're going to feed your selfish compulsions, and out of that is going to come this fruit. Trinket gods. What's that mean? That means that I'm trying to buy my happiness. Ouch. Uncontrollable anger. Like all these things, you look at this and going, oh, these are battles. This is what our society feeds off of, and this is what we in the church, we got to pay attention and saying, wait a second. If you start seeing some of this stuff creep into your life and more, chances are you're probably being led by your natural resources and not by the Spirit. And we have an unfair advantage as believers to saying we can choose to be led by the Spirit. And he goes on and he says this. Man, some of those on the list, I was like, oh, guilty. And then Paul goes on, he says, but what happens when we live God's way? He brings gifts into our lives, much the same way that fruit appears in an orchard. This is what Jesus said, if you abide in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Paul describes what this fruit is. It's like, he says, much like the same way fruit appears in the orchard. He says, here's the fruit, things like affection for others, exuberance about life, serenity, peace. We develop a willingness to stick with things. Wait, I thought that was a personality trait. Holy Spirit can give you the willingness to stick with things, a sense of compassion in the heart, a conviction that basic holiness permeates things and people. We find ourselves involved in loyal commitments, not needing to force our way in life. Not needing to force our way in life. Able to marshal and direct our energies wisely. These are the results. These are the results of being led by the Spirit. That list I like a whole lot more, don't you? He goes on in verse 25, he says, since this is the kind of life we have chosen, the life of the Spirit, let us make sure that we do not just hold it as an idea in our heads or a sentiment in our hearts. Oh, man, I read that and I thought, oof. If you would have asked me 2 months ago if I'm being led by the Spirit, yes, absolutely. You asked me 2 months ago if I'm Holy Spirit filled, yes, I'm Holy Spirit filled. Do I trust God? Yes, I trust God, all the rest of it. And yet, I looked at this and I challenged myself and I was like, is it an idea that I just held in my head and not in my heart and I didn't lean on it and going, no, am I truly yielding to the Holy Spirit, slowing down enough to say, Holy Spirit, what are you saying? What do you got? But work out its implications in every detail of your life, every detail, not just your church life, every detail of your life. The Holy Spirit's not just a good idea, or someone that we submit to during church, or a gift that we unleash 1 hour a week on a Sunday. He's a lifetime, 24/7 commitment. And my challenge to you is to yield to the Holy Spirit in every detail of your life.